let me shift here, and I just want to talk a little bit about silence. Silence, my sisters and brothers, has many dimensions. There is a sacred silence, which is that silence out of which creative contemplation grows. It's a meditation on the word and the will of God. It's the silence out of which we meditate and get closer to God. It's the silence in which fervent prayer is born. There is a sacred silence. But then there's a seething silence that comes when you are quiet externally, but you've got a storm going on the inside. The late Dr. Howard Thurman called that a noisy quietness. But then finally, and here's the silence I want to get to, there is a sinful silence. And Adam's silence falls into this category because a sinful silence is a silence that comes over you when you ought to say something, but you don't say nothing at all. It is that silence that creeps in when you ought to speak up for God, but you sit there acting like you don't know what God said. My sisters and brothers, I fear that Adam was not only silent on that fateful day in the garden when a serpent showed up, but Adam has remained silent through the centuries. When Africans were captured and taken from their homeland, packed in the hulls of ships, sold on auction blocks, beat and killed and misused and kept in chattel slavery, Adam was silent. When Jews were persecuted, deported, and murdered by Nazis, Adam was silent. When Native Americans were slaughtered in the acts of genocide so their land could be taken from them, Adam was silent. When our ancestors were lynched and called boy and girl, even though they were full grown, when they were denied employment and equal access to resources, Adam was silent. And today, far too often, when our boys are shooting and killing each other on the streets, and our girls suffer from low self-esteem and give birth to children whose daddies won't stay around to take care of them, Adam is still silent. Sisters and brothers, there is a sinful silence among us when injustice is raging and we remain quiet. When people are aching, when people are hurting, when babies are crying and dying of hunger and not having enough love from insufficient care, and we remain silent, that is a sinful silence. When the church looks and sees what's going on in its communities, and not just in its communities, but what's going on right there in the household of faith, and we sit there and act like we don't know what's going on, that is a sinful silence. And let me suggest that there's a time when silence is sinful. And here in the text, we see a snake talking to Adam's wife. Adam remains silent. Adam should have said something. My sisters and brothers, the nation is waiting for somebody to say something. Go on, touch your neighbor and tell him you ought to say something. You see them boys on the corner, you ought to say something. You see what's happening with those sisters. I'm not talking about Pookie and Ray Ray and them. I'm talking about the saints' children. Y'all ain't gonna help me in here today. You ought to say something. The classroom is waiting for somebody to say something. Youth violence is waiting for somebody to say something. Every community, every city, every town, every home, every boy, every girl, every family is waiting for the church to break the silence. And if we don't break the silence, let me tell you what's going to happen. If we don't break the silence, we end up embracing the appeals of the serpent. What are the appeals of the serpent? Oh, bless the name of the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. You got to make up in your mind that what God has for me, it is for me. I might not have it right now, may not get it next week, you might try to stop me from getting it, but if God said it's mine, I want you to know after a while, I'm going to get what belongs to me. .7 WTCC. Good morning and welcome to the Spoken Word. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swan the second. And as usual, we'll be telling it like it is through cultural idioms and nuances that shape the order, ethos, and chaos of the African American experience. Words have their own vitality. They shape their own consciousness and create their own context for interpreting social and spiritual reality. The spoken word contains the power to reshape the landscape of society. 3 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. I want to thank Mr. Kenneth Barnett for bringing us up until the 9 o'clock hour with The Promise. You can hear The Promise every Monday morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., bringing you the best in gospel music. Good way to start out your Monday morning. Great way to start out your week. What a week it has been since the last time we talked. War has broken out in Ukraine. There's been all kinds of conversations around that. And I'm going to speak my piece on that today. Listen, here's the reality, my sisters and brothers. Anti-black racism is not just a phenomenon in these yet to be United States of America. It is global. Okay? Anti-blackness is a universal language. Okay? Spoken by predominantly white nations all over this globe. Ukraine has a well-documented history of anti-black racism. And I guess people thought maybe that was going to change when Putin decided that he was going to attack. You know, they were going to love black people because they were all in this together. No, they could be at war and still hate black people. And that was demonstrated quick and fast. And people have been trying to chalk it up as a misinformation campaign by Russia. Russia's just trying to get you all to think this, and they're trying to divide us and yada, yada, yada. Listen, Russia doesn't have to tell black people that racism exists. Russia is racist. Come on. I mean, really, y'all really think black people only think that there's racism in Ukraine because of a Russian misinformation campaign that's going on? Y'all can't be that serious. Can't be serious. I mean, we are students of history. You know, the former USSR and most of the nations, all of the nations affiliated with it were racist. Matter of fact, I couldn't even start my TikTok live this morning. Here's the crazy thing. I put in the description, and you'll notice in the description on all the other social media networks, it says anti-blackness is global. That's the title of this show. I couldn't even start my TikTok live this morning because it said one of the words was banned, was prohibited. You know what that word was? Anti-blackness. I took out anti-blackness out of the title and replaced it with racism. And it's live now. It's no problem. But you can't even say the word anti-blackness on TikTok. Really? Really? So all over the place, you got this attack on critical race theory.
You know, all this stuff, and we can't even say anti-blackness on TikTok. I mean, that's too much. That's too much for white folks' sensibilities. For us to talk about the reality of anti-blackness, my goodness, boy, talk about some folks that are fragile. But we're going to talk about it today. If y'all want to cut me off of my social medias and stuff, hey, thank you for the follow. I see you. Go right ahead. Tell somebody the bishop is on the air. Welcome all of you who are listening on WTCC, our 4,000 watts here in the Pioneer Valley in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, all over the Pioneer Valley. Welcome to the radio broadcast. Welcome to our global social media network, those who are on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Twitch and TikTok and wherever you're chiming in from. Welcome. Remember, you can buy a badge there on Instagram as well. Tell a friend, tell somebody the bishop is on the air. I need you to rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from. Let me know where you're watching from. Always love to know where my listeners are chiming into the radio program from. All right. And of course, we'll shout out some of you all. And then like, share, subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe. I see New York in the house. Let people know that the bishop is on the air. I see Los Angeles, California is up in the building. Let me know where you're coming in from. Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky. Belize is up in the building. Toronto is in the house. You know, they're all over on the ground. Panama City is in here. All right. Yes, rep your city, rep your town. Let somebody know we're on here. We're going to come right back. A little bit of a music break, and then we'll be back with our conversation. Stay with us. If you're in the Twitter space, you can put your request in. The rest of you can give us a call. We'll put the number up shortly, 413-337-1867. London, England is in the house. Somerville, New Jersey is up in the building. Stay with us.
Talk to me, Daddy. Talk to me, Daddy. Talk to me, Daddy. Talk to me, Daddy. A positive attitude says everything about you. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. Every day you get up, you've been given a gift. That's why we call it the present. And it's up to you how you unwrap it. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow's a mystery. Today is a gift. So don't let the pain of your past bleed into your present and poison your future. Stop replaying the movie. Why did this happen to me? When it's done with you, be done with it. If it seems like you keep running into pitfalls, it's an indication that you're flying too low. So set your sights a little higher. Remember, eagles fly, guides themselves. If you can see the invisible, you can do the impossible. Allow your challenges to be a stepping stone, propel you into new possibilities. So be discontent with your past accomplishment. You're only as great as your last success. So maintain your hunger and your passion. Remember this, within every seed there is a tree, and every tree there is a forest. Learn what you were born into. It took you the environment to prepare you for your ultimate purpose. It was not a setback, it was a setup. Your purpose and potential is bigger than your past, pain, or power. Listen to your heart, don't let your mind fool you. Little time, let me to you. Whatever you do is gonna surely come back to you. Successful people will do the things they hate with the things they love. Much of life is about sacrifice. You gotta give up something to get something. Success is not about what you've accomplished, but it's what you have overcome. For it's a test that you pass in life which qualifies you for the next level. You have to be willing to face your challenges and overcome them. Most people ride 12,000 miles a year moving forward, but most accidents are caused when they move backwards. You gotta stay focused on what's ahead of you instead of what's behind you. It's your daily routine that determines your success or failure. Whatever you practice at is what you become great at. What's more important than being intelligent is having the right attitude. Respect costs you nothing, but it will cost you everything not to have it. So don't be too smart for your own good. Remember, a hard head makes a soft behind. What's more important than your five senses is common sense. The heart of a fool is in his mouth, but the heart of a wise man is in his character. So don't sweat the small things. The answer to a short temper is a long walk. Be slow to speak, quick to listen, and remember this: you haven't lived long enough to know everything. Your character is what matters most. Once you have been labeled with a bad reputation, it's hard for people to see you any other way. A good name is worth more than all the money in the world. Your life is broken up into three parts. First you learn, then you earn, and then you return. You gotta get back.
Gotta give back. 413-337-1867. Coming up at 10 o'clock is Justice and Flow. So stay with us. We're going to flow right into Justice and Flow because that's how we do around here. But tell somebody, tell a friend, the Bishop is on. I see Michigan in the house. I see Springdale, Maryland. I see Chicago. Hey, Whitney, my baby girl. Well, my oldest child, but she's still my baby girl. I see ATL, Atlanta is up in the house. I see Winston-Salem, North Kakalaki is up in here. I got Brazil over here on the gram, up in the building. Where else y'all coming in from? Let me know where you're chiming in from. Another Chicago up in here. Chi-Town loves the Bishop, y'all. Connecticut is in the house. Kenya, Africa is up in the house. Romania is up in here. If you're not following me, go ahead and follow me on all my social media networks. I'm at Talbert Swan. Dallas, Texas is in the building. Yes. South Africa is in the building. And they made sure to tell me it's a white supremacist nation. Yes, but they are in the building. South Africa is up in here. The Philippines are in the building with us today. Good morning to each and every one of you. The Sudan is in the building today. 413-337-1867. Miami, Florida is up in here. Miami is in here. Hagerstown, Maryland is in the house. Yes. Y'all representing IG and Facebook. Where my YouTubians at? Let me make sure YouTube is on deck around here. Okay, yes, YouTube is live. I just wanted to make sure. So I need my YouTubians on deck. Where y'all coming in from on YouTube? Come on in here and represent, YouTubians. Once again, 413-337-1867. As I stated earlier, I gotta recognize the Bahamas. Since I called for the YouTubians, the YouTube came back and said Bahamas, drop the mic. As I forestated, Ukraine has a long. I'm trying to get up in this conversation real quick. Let me see. Let me see what's good. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Bishop.
How you?
Doing fine. I was just calling to comment on what happened in Ukraine in regards to our brothers and sisters over there now.
Okay.
They're being treated.
Yeah.
Something about Ukraine is like something that most people don't realize is that it's not just like a far right country, but like they have this thing where they have like far right summer camp where they send their kids to far right.
It's a straight up white nationalist country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So like the information's out there. So I feel like another thing was just due diligence on our part for not checking stuff like that. Because honestly, I would have left the country like 2 weeks ago.
Right. When they first started reporting, that Russia was going to attack, why would you stay?
Right. Exactly. Because when society collapses, bad people are going to do what they're going to do.
And the other thing is the fact that it was being attacked by Russia. Russia has a documented history of anti-black racism. The first thing that they were going to think, if they're successful in taking over the country, is they're going to target Africans that are still there. I mean, So you're right. I would have gotten out real quick.
I don't know if you followed. There was a guy on Twitter called Q Anthony. He went on Discord and he found that some people from Ukraine were setting up fake group chats and pretend they were helping Africans. They were telling them to wear armbands that are red or yellow. But those are actually armbands that can get you shot.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's crazy. Like there's so many bad actors right now.
Absolutely. Appreciate your call.
Thank you, Bishop. Have a good day.
You too. As I stated, Ukraine has a long documented history of racism, and that didn't change because Russia attacked. There is a black Ukraine, and there is a black population in Ukraine. There are black people who were born and raised in Ukraine. Matter of fact, an Olympic gold medalist now serves as Ukraine's first black member of parliament. Who and was urging his fellow countrymen to resist the Russian invasion, and was highlighting the nation's little known but vulnerable African Ukrainian population. His name is Zan Bolinia, and he has spoken openly about racism that he faced in Ukraine after bringing home the Greco-Roman middleweight gold medal in the Tokyo Games. But he and other black Ukrainians are still expressing their loyalty to the country, even while they fear they could become specific targets for Russian occupiers. Something about black people, we somehow still remain faithful to nations that have never treated us with human dignity. In America, black people fought and died on every field of battle that this nation has ever fought. And you see that same level of loyalty from African Ukrainians, who see it as their nation, but of course, their nation doesn't see them as. as we can see. And here's the thing: I got a lot of people who were reaching out to me, well-intentioned Black people, who were saying, Bishop, we appreciate you sharing what's happening in Ukraine, but you gotta be careful because we don't know if that's misinformation. Here's the thing: in this day and age of fake news, so-called fake news, that whole phenomenon that Donald Trump brought with him, that if you don't like what's being reported or what's being seen with your own eyes, just call it fake and dismiss it. Yes, written communication, intelligence that is brought forth, we ought to scrutinize. But don't tell me to scrutinize what I see with my own eyes. That's that Trumpish stuff. Ignore what you see. What you see ain't really what you saw. They've been telling Black people that forever. As we continue to be extrajudiciously murdered and beaten on the streets of America, we demanded that we have cameras, to monitor the police. And even with cameras, even with videotape evidence, courts have told us we didn't see what we saw. We didn't see Eric Garner get choked and killed and murdered by the police. That ain't really what happened. Even though we saw it with our own eyes, that's not really what we saw. And while I appreciate well-intentioned folk who want to say, don't get caught up in the misinformation campaign, I saw what I saw. I saw white folks blocking the train, keeping Africans off. I saw them physically removing Black people from the buses. I saw them closing the gates and refusing to allow only Black people shelter in 3-degree temperature. I saw African women standing out in the cold with a 2-month-old baby, unable to get shelter. I saw them refusing Black people entrance at the Poland border. I don't care that Poland's officials came out with a statement dismissing Nigeria's condemnation of their treatment of Africans, stating that we treat everybody the same. No, you don't. No, you don't. There is no white nation on this planet that treats Black people the same as white folks. Stop it. Cut it out. There's too much world history that refutes and decries that notion. We're not really lump. We know the history and we know what we have lived and continue to live. So while there may be attempts at Russia to spread misinformation, I'm not denying that. But don't tell me what I see ain't what I saw, and don't tell me that I need Russia to get me to believe that racism exists. It's like what kills me is when when white Americans try to tell me, well, Bishop, you can't believe what Russia is telling you. They're trying to divide us. We've been divided. When the hell has America not been divided? I mean, what history are you reading? What nation are you living in to where you think it takes Russia to divide us and polarize us along racial lines? America been divided for time immemorial. Since this nation began, it's always been divided along racial lines. We never needed Russia to divide us. And y'all need to stop insulting Black people by telling us that the racism we see both in America and around the globe is a Russian trick. like white supremacy don't really exist. Cut that foolishness out. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. And I'm going to get to you. I see you all in the Twitter space trying to get on. Black people have stood in solidarity with Ukraine only to receive anti-black dehumanizing racism in return. We are always the first people because of our deep humanitarian spirit, because of our forgiving nature, sometimes I think to our own detriment, because of our altruism, because of our deep spiritual and religious convictions. Black people are always the first to empathize with oppressed people. Okay? We always empathize. When there was an uptick in attacks on Asians, it was black folk who were running around talking about stop Asian hate. With the rampant anti-blackness that exists in the Asian community, it's black folk who was talking about stop Asian hate. With the rampant anti-blackness that exists in the Latino community, it was black folk that were pushing for DACA and for Latino immigrants at the border to be treated fairly. In spite of how these various communities have hated black people are always the first ones to start praying for other folks. We embody pray for your enemies. I mean, black people take that scripture literally. And as soon as the attack on Ukraine came, black folk were saying, pray for Ukraine. Pray for Ukraine. We empathize with oppressed people. We empathize with the unfair treatment of folk because of our own experience. We know what it's like. And so while black folk were saying, pray for Ukraine, and while black folk were sending money and trying to do all they could to help in Ukraine, Ukrainians were mistreating black folk who were trying to get out of the country. And so even when we show solidarity against a nation in crisis, show solidarity with that nation against the repression, black people on the ground in that nation still have to go above and beyond for any shred of dignity or mere safety that white Eastern Europeans are being afforded without the blink of an eye. While we're over here praying for Ukraine, they're pulling our brothers and sisters off buses, blocking them from trains, refusing to give them shelter, and treating them like third and fourth class citizens. That's what's going on. Let me get Alexander Tyler up in the Twitter space. Alexander, you're in the house.
Good morning, Bishop Swan. How are you doing today?
I'm good. You?
Trying to keep my head above water. One of the things that I wanted to comment on was the characterization of the media of what is happening in Ukraine and the language that is being used about a quote unquote, it's a civilized society, it's a quote unquote European country, and then they, in the same breath, completely walk over countries in the Middle East and countries in Africa who had the exact same situation, that they're characterized as uncivilized, or that somehow they are deserving of the invasions autocratic rule that they experience.
Thank you. I was talking about this the other day. I talked about, and here in America, we have a really poor sense of the scope of history. And we think anything that happened 20, 30 years ago is ancient history, when it's really not. And we still have the lingering effects of those things. when we go back and look at the crisis in Rwanda, where 800,000 Tutsis were literally slaughtered, and the United Nations had the intelligence, and America had the intelligence, and the Clinton administration turned a blind eye to the slaughter in Rwanda, and the United Nations turned a blind. It was like it wasn't even happening. We don't care when there was terrorism happening. And little girls being kidnapped and murdered in Nigeria, when things were happening in Ethiopia, and we can just go on and on, with documented facts that verify exactly what you're saying. When it's a nation on the African continent or in the so-called Middle East, anywhere where black and brown people are, we don't care. And one of the most poignant examples I use, day one on the Ukrainian incursion, sanctions went on Russia. Day one. They had prepared the sanctions prior to the attack. In 1948, when the Nationalist Party won the election in South Africa, that was the official start of the apartheid regime and the repression, oppression, dehumanization of black South Africans. And it took America until 1986, nearly 40 years later, and only under extreme international pressure, before it ever put any sanctions on South Africa. It watched black people be dehumanized for 40 years before it just decided, oh yeah, well, maybe we'll put sanctions on South Africa. But in this Eastern European nation, where most of the folk are white, sanctions went on immediately. And then they don't want us to talk about that disparity.
Well, they don't want anybody to talk about any disparities, right? I mean, the concepts of equality and equity are just basically four-letter words, not only in the United States, but quite frankly across the world. I mean, you look at oppressed peoples everywhere, it's the same formula. And it's just implemented by different power structures depending on your mentality. And that's just one of those things where I just kind of sit back and I've been shocked by this whole entire thing. So I'm like, literally, like, you're not even trying to cover your language. You're not even trying to pretend that you're not being openly racist about this, your take on the situation. Now, what's happening to the Ukrainian people in terms of being invaded by another country, of course that's not good. I mean, of course that's a bad thing. But at the same time, it's like, how come when this happens to any other, melanistic majority country, why is it that in those situations, it's just everybody turns a blind eye and nobody gives a damn?
You know what? I gotta steal that right there. Melanistic majority. I like that. No, you're
welcome to it, brother.
you are exactly on point. You are exactly on point with what you're saying. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. 413-337 1867. 413-337 1867. If you want to chime in on the conversation, if you're in the Twitter space, just put in your request. And I got iTrade in the Twitter space. iTrade, you're in the building. You're in the building, iTrade. Going once. Going twice. All right, come back. You got to immediately unmute so you can get your conversation going. But yeah, the caller definitely was on point in terms of the sheer hypocrisy. It's just so I can't even think of the word. It's the gaslighting, the hypocrisy, the blatant disregard. Like you said, they're not even trying to cover up. It's like, yeah, we definitely. It's kind of like when there was this video that surfaced when Joe Biden was in the Senate, and talking about Haiti. And he was just being as candid as he could, and he said something to this effect. I don't have the exact quote, but this is the gist of what he said. He said basically, if Haiti sunk to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, we wouldn't blink an eye, because Haiti is insignificant in the geopolitical spectrum regarding the interest of America. We really don't care. He said that. He literally said that as a sitting U.S. senator. We don't give a blankety blank about Haiti, and their actions say the same thing. As the caller said, any melanated majority nation, they will blatantly let you know that we do not care. But when it comes to a predominantly white Eastern European nation, man, please. Brain food. You're in the Twitter space. Brain food. Come on up. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. Yeah, just listening to the comments that you were making about Haiti. I've done a lot of extensive research, a little bit about this. I started in community regeneration. I'm a business person in my own right, but I've always given back to community growth, community regeneration, trying to empower people at the grassroots level. And that kind of took me on a journey into trying to explore and get beneath the causation of racialized poverty. And then that took me back to going to the genesis of racism, which starts to be formulated out of slavery around 1630, coming up towards the current era. I've got a wonderful pinned tweet on it's a documentary, it's a 3-part series called Racism and History, and it's very comprehensive. It goes through the Americas, it deals with Haiti, and it brings us back up to the present day. But what cross-cuts all of that is the fact that we find in the Jamestown Rebellion that divide and conquer was used in the Americas. Race becomes a social construction as a means of control against black and melanated people. But at that time, because of the chattel slavery, it's primarily aimed at keeping the African in their place. And that is the backbone of wealth generation. It developed Europe, the Portuguese, the British Empire. We know about the tobacco plantations, the corn plantations in the States, and then we have the South Americas as well. But ultimately, like I said, the whole thing that cross-cuts through that is economics and keeping black people subdued so we can be used as cheap labor. We all know about the sharecropping, what happened there. So it's these poverty traps. When we get Jim Crow, the slipping, the sliding, and now we're in the era where racism is just straight out denied in a lot of it.
Right.
But I think, just to finish, what I'm saying is when we look at the poor global south, after slavery, we get colonization, and basically we get the creation of the plantation inside Africa and inside black and brown countries, and the production of cash crops and so on. So then we create these debt traps. So when we're talking about death by 1,000 cuts, all the different versions of racism, which we face in all these different thousands of battles, and we see police killing people and all this, it's all about making money from us. And for me, the flip side of that is we must come together to make money and build in collective power together. And I mean across the diasporas, and into Africa, and pool our wealth together. That should be the only thing we are doing. And forget flags. This is about melanin.
Yeah. And the reality,
you're melanated, come together.
Yes,
and build.
And the reality is this: the non-white world outnumbers the white world 11-1. Think about it. If we could ever get together, how powerful that coalition could be in terms of wiping out this scourge of white supremacy across the globe.
This is why every time we have put a movement together, it has been deliberately focused on in coalition by white countries that make money from the things as they are. And when you look at the Black Panther movement and the Civil Rights movement in America, it was deliberately targeted by J. Edgar Hoover.
Yes.
Right. Marcus Garvey was targeted by J. Edgar Hoover. And Nkrumah in Democratic Ghana, when we start to see the call for colonialism to end in Africa and throughout the Caribbean, we see subversion being deliberately targeted. So on the one hand, you've got the West doing political doublespeak about supporting democracy, but then on the underbelly of that and in the shadows, what you've got is the manipulation. I mean, Patrice Lumumba was murdered in Africa,
and then when he was murdered, the U.S. Was the force behind Mobutu Sese Seko coming into power, and then 32 years later, when he was no longer in power, the American press talked about what a brutal, evil dictator he was, without even mentioning the fact that he was only in power because the U.S. behind the screen helped to murder Patrice Lumumba and put him in office.
Well, this is the game, you see. If a black person is seen in front of the camera killing another black person, then black people, we get called this black on black crime. But you see, neo-colonialism knows that, I mean, obviously when Africa starts to go independent, we see the independence movement in India and Pakistan, in pretty much everywhere where black people are being brutalized and being used as a form of chattel to industrialize the rich white north. You know, so basically people realize that this isn't working and they're being held back. You know, so by asking for the colonizers to leave, as what happened in Africa, you get a more sophisticated version. And Nkrumah said, if Africa doesn't unite, and when I say that, I don't just mean the motherland, I mean the diasporas.
Yeah.
And I say diasporas because we are spread on slave ships all over this globe.
Absolutely.
Right? So if they don't unite, then what will happen in Africa is those who make money from and have wealth from slavery will come back and they will do neo-colonialism, and they will literally buy the assets in Africa.
And we've been trying to do this for so many years. It was really the Organization for African Unity that Malcolm X tried to duplicate here when he created the Organization for African American Unity, understanding that only when we come together can we defeat this behemoth of white supremacy.
Absolutely. But we shouldn't. I have this conversation in another network, and I hear this, that black people just need to organize themselves, and we are the problem, and we don't come together. And it's not true. When you look at history, we have come together so many times to move the dial in a measurable, permanent way. But we have always been attacked.
Absolutely.
Right? And that has been done in overt and covert ways.
Attack.
All I will say is, all we have to do is work out who makes money by the underpayment of black people in the labour market. Who makes money by not paying tax in Africa and buying up gold mines and diamonds and these sorts of things. Where if you prop up a dictator, they will take a few mansions in the Cayman Islands or wherever, and send their children to Oxford or Cambridge in England to sell out their entire nation, and a lot of neo-colonial powers will prop these people up, which is what you were talking about with that. Because anybody who is West-leaning, and I don't necessarily mean in an ethical way,
Right.
because the West will prop up some of the most dodgy people. I mean, we supplied weapons to Saddam Hussein, you know, and then when he turned bad, the West had to go in and deal with it.
And recruited them.
We supplied weapons to Iran, right? And we're doing it with Saudi Arabia now, and they're coming Yemen. So there is no moral code in this. It's about power and money and resources and extraction. If we look at it in those with that lens, then we'll realize the things what we have to do to get beyond that. And it is about unity, and it is about collectively using our resources. You know, we have to do that.
Brother, powerful. Thank you so much for chiming in today. Yeah, I mean, so much of what he said, man, is you know, on point. I mean, just a powerful soliloquy about the state of the world and the global anti-blackness that I'm talking about. Who makes the money and who has to be subjugated and dehumanized in order for them to continue to do that. And that's you and I. That's the reality of it. Issa in the Twitter space. Issa, you're in the building. All right, come through, Issa, come through.
Hello, Bishop. I wanted to intervene because when you put it, because just all the truth right now. You guys, I think, sorry, but it's important for the people also. We stand on the search of this confidence, quite honestly, to understand Africa is the birth of humanity.
Yes.
All European countries using Africa. You're bringing it. That's also to say, like, in poverty, children that are dying and stuff. And I think anytime a movement, a black movement is united on earth, and then activists are getting killed and murdered and accused of the worst crime.
Yes. But that's their MO. That's their MO. You're right. Every time we do come together and unify, the modus operandi of our open enemy is to divide us. That old divide and conquer thing, they spend a lot of time making sure that they pit us against each other and divide us and keep us from coming together, because they understand how powerful we would be if we ever did that in a substantive way, because there are historical examples of it.
Africa is a huge continent. The black community is huge on that earth, and neo-colonialism is still going on. I'm quite sure people, if they want to close their eyes and see their friends, the white privilege on this earth, and they don't care about others, well, the way human beings is, I think it's easy to make association as a white person and talk about human rights and children on earth and everything, when we're still everything out there, and we're facing the black community for centuries, no?
Yeah. No,
I'm talking to African people and not they speak better things than I do. I'm telling you, they were invited. We have people in Congo saying when colonialism is a good thing because it's going around horrible lives. Occidental country, I'm sorry, but it's a loss you can never find. I'm sorry to you, and I shut anybody, I don't have to apologize really because that's the truth too.
Yeah, it's the truth.
I think we should. Yeah.
Absolutely. I appreciate you so much, sister. I appreciate you chiming in on the conversation today. I mean, you guys are bringing out so many excellent points. Let me bring Whistleblower. Let me get Whistleblower up in here. Whistleblower, you're up in the Twitter space. Holler back at her, brother. Come through, whistleblower. Now, for those of you who are not in the Twitter space, 413-337-1867. 413-337-1867. About 8 minutes left in the spoken word before we transition over to Justice Flow. Are you there, whistleblower? All right, I want to get as many of you who were trying to get in as I can. Get in. Let me see if I can get OG up in here. You're in the Twitter space. Good morning.
Hey, Bishop, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
How you doing, everybody? Great space, by the way. Let me start by saying that.
Thank you.
And great conversation going back and forth. I've said this many times. I think where a lot of times where we failed in our movement is that we create a single leader and we give him the power. And we get to this point where you chop the head, the body will die. And we're not splitting it because we know when we know when white folks have a leader, if they pull them down, they put up another one, and they put up two of them. You know,
right.
It's a situation that we get into. That's why I love Martin Luther King, but the problem is the problem we did, we gave him the power, and then he died and destroyed everything else, destroyed all of LA or whatever. And I understand it was out of anger, but we should have been in a position to put ourselves announce another leader or leaders to continue that movement because it was an important one. And I think because we continue to do we've done that in the past, we got to get to a point where you say when we unite, there has to be multiple leaders on multiple fronts who stand as high as Martin Luther King on all fronts in order for us to succeed in the movement. We can't just rely on one person.
Absolutely agree. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Oh man, getting such good commentary in here. 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh, you're on. Left in the spoken word. Let me see if I can get a couple more up in here. V Link Up. You're in the Twitter space. V Link Up, you're in the Twitter space. Holler at me. 10 o'clock once again. 10 o'clock. Come with Justice and Flow. I don't know what's on tap for it. I guess I'll find out with Wifey chimes in. V Link Up, I want to get us in. Are you in here?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, cool. Good morning. I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, my phone's not messing up. Okay, I have a question. It's kind of directed to our African brothers and sisters in America. I would like to know if you think that what happened in Ukraine will make them get on code here in America. Because a lot of times they're not on code. But we can tell them. Them about the oppression. When we tell them about the racism, they say, well, maybe you need to get a job. Or maybe you need to stop being late. Or maybe you need to get a better education. And it'll stop and the oppression will go away.
Listen,
and I don't know why they equate a job with oppression.
I was having this conversation. I was having this conversation with my wife just this morning. And I was saying the same thing, that perhaps, for lack of a better term, this will be their inward wake-up call, that they are not being mistreated this way in Ukraine. Africans in Ukraine, Jamaicans that are students in Ukraine, that they're being treated this way because of their black skin, not because of their nationality or anything. And hopefully they will begin to understand that, because we have the same problem with our Caribbean brothers and sisters, our African brothers and sisters. I'm not black. I'm not black. Yes, the hell you are. And that's what you're finding out right now in Ukraine. They are not mistreating you because you're African or because you're from Jamaica or whatever your nationality is. They're treating you this way because of your black skin. And that's what they need to understand. You still with me, sis? All right.
Yes, sir. I hope that we got. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let me see. I got 3 minutes. Let me see who I can still get on. Y'all keep coming through here. Herbie Hancock. Are you gonna play something for me? Herbie, you are in the Twitter space. Holler at me. Where'd you go, Herbie? I think I might have lost my Twitter space. Okay. 413-337-1867. Let me see if I can get this back up. Don't know what just happened here, but in any case, listen, the next Lift Every Voice lecture series event is happening a week from tomorrow on March 8th. On March 8th, it is happening. Dr. Aubrey Hendricks is going to be discussing his book, Christians Against Christianity. Christians Against Christianity. You definitely want to be a part of that particular event. Now, you got to get on and you have got to register. Okay? You need to register. You need to go to focusspringfield.com, focusspringfield.com/LEV 2022. focusspringfield.com LEV 2022 in order to register for that event. focusspringfield.com/LEV 2022. All right. My wife is sending me text messages. I'm not sure what's going on, but in any case, I got to transition off of WTCC. If you're looking for a place to worship, check us out at the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ, 35 Alden Street, Springfield, Massachusetts. And we're at 11 o'clock a.m. on Sunday morning. Also, we'll be streaming live as well. So get with us, check us out. And until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, remember, God loves you, and so do I. Those of you who are going to continue on with Justice and Flow, stay right here with us in the social media space. We'll be right back. Peace. Coming back. Don't go nowhere. Pay attention.
Hey, I didn't know you was there.
Pay attention.
Good morning.
What's happening? I think they cut my Twitter space off. I think it was getting a little too heavy. Getting a little too
Might have been. I mean, anytime you have those global social justice conversations.
it abruptly shut off, and then it wouldn't let me reconnect. I'm like, interesting,
Right.
It's crazy, man. Just crazy.
I'm not surprised if that is the case. I mean, and I would be surprised that they let it go so long, because you were having a global conversation
Yeah.
about injustice, or whatever. So, they very sensitive about that. Good morning, Mother Green. Good morning, Whitney. Good morning, Whitney. Kiss my babies for me.
Kiss your baby.
Yeah.
Oh, kiss your baby.
You talking to them, you say kiss my babies for me. So I'm talking, so I'm saying kiss my babies.
Okay. Whatever you say.
You don't say kiss me and Mimi babies when you talking to them.
Okay, fair enough.
Uh-huh. Fair. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, babe.
What's
As you
happening?
can see, I don't have a guest this morning. You surprised? You
Oh,
my guest. You my guest.
I didn't know what you had. I told the people, I said I don't know what she got on tap until she get on here. You
No,
know.
I had to reschedule the guest for today, so that's the reason why we don't have someone other than ourselves to talk to today in our audience, of course. But I do have something that I think is going to be pretty pertinent, for us to discuss today with our listening audience. I'm calling today. Um, well, for this month, this is going to be our Mental Health Monday. This is going to be our Mental Health Monday. So we're going to address something that's near and dear to my heart. But before we get into that, I wanted to say that I thought today's show was really enlightening. So I really appreciate you having that discussion on your show today. But I also wanted to give you a shout out because I thought that Lift Every Voice was awesome this past Tuesday. I thought that Ada was amazing. She's a comedian, but I believe she's more of an activist than she is a comedian. And I just think that that's awesome how she's able to use her comedic platform to bring awareness, especially about Black and Brown unity into the conversation of social justice. So her testimony is amazing. You know, she was amazing. And again, thank you for all the hard work that you do to bring Lift Every Voice to the community every year. I know the sacrifice that you make. I know the hard work that you put into, you know, everything that you do. But, you know, definitely for the community in bringing Lift Every Voice to us every year,
Thank
even
you.
in a pandemic. So thank you for that. Did you
Thank
want to? I thought that, you know, we should probably share a little bit of it, you know, what
you.
we experienced. You know, we didn't get to talk. You've been so busy. We've both kind of been
Well, it
having
was a crazy
shit.
week. I mean, I had, it was so much going on. I mean, we had
Mhm.
Lift Every Voice on Tuesday, then we were at American International College on Wednesday, and at University of Massachusetts on Thursday, and snowstormed on Friday, and then we were in Bridgeport for a jurisdictional function, and then preaching for Power Gospel on the same on Saturday night. So it's been a nonstop week. But yeah, the the beginning of the series, it was refreshing because it's been the first time, you know, in over a year that we were able to actually come in person. Because remember last year, we did it all virtual, and we're in that paradigm of doing things virtually because of the pandemic. But there's nothing like that personal touch, when you're in person. And we've brought so many great people through Spring of Hope, to bless our church
Mhm.
and the community, and to have that personal touch with people. And there's nothing like, when they come and they drop their wisdom, and people are able to ask them questions and then take pictures with them, and actually be in the same space as people that they're only used to seeing, on television or on radio or whatever. And so I want to encourage Springfield to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I think we don't do enough to take advantage of. You,
Mhm.
you and I used to go to various things in the city and would be shocked. I remember we went to see Nikki Giovanni at Western New England.
Mhm.
Besides us, there might have been two or three other black people, and
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, this is Nikki
Nikki
Giovanni.
Giovanni, right? It's like,
Where are you Negroes at?
right.
Nikki Giovanni. And it's like, when, and the same thing when when AIC brought Desmond Tutu.
Mhm.
I went to see Desmond Tutu, and I see all the clear people that were there, and I was looking for us. And I'm like, y'all, this Desmond Tutu, the Desmond Tutu. Where you at? And I mean, and then just when I think of the people that we, Juwanza Kunjufu and Joe
Oh
Madison,
my God, he's my favorite.
Cliff,
Now I hate to put that out there because I mean I love everybody, but Jawanza is my
I mean,
favorite. I
I mean,
mean, so
Madison,
humble.
Clifton Davis, um, um,
Clifton Davis was so humble, so sweet. And
sister,
as a matter of fact, when he came, it was on. We had a really, really, really bad snowstorm.
and we were going to postpone, and Clifton called and said, "Oh no,
No,
we're,
he got on the train and came anyway. With his wife.
he,
With
he
his wife.
he was on Broadway, um, in the
In
play
Aladdin.
Aladdin, and,
Uh-huh.
and no, I'm only in New York City. We're getting on the train and we're coming.
And it was just a few of us in the building, but he spoke to us like it was thousands of people in the room, because the snowstorm, certainly, kept people away. But, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's really sad to me as much love and affection that we have for home, in other words, for our city of Springfield. It's really sad to me that, when we are allowed the opportunity to put on programs like this, or to, certainly, bring great people into the community like this, that we don't get more support. I mean, I just got to say it. It hurts a little bit, because we're doing this for the community. You're definitely doing it for the community. You're doing more work than I am. I'm just really in the background supporting you. But with all of the work that goes into bringing a program like this to the community every year, and then for the community not to support it like they could, it's
Yeah.
a little disheartening. But it's okay. We're gonna keep going.
Let me
We're
say,
gonna keep going.
let me say this. I want to thank the community that does come out
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
on
They
it.
know who they are. I mean, this is no shade on those that are,
But
but we know who they are. Like, we know who
so many
supports the
more.
program, and been very supportive, down through the years. This is year 12. Is it 11 or 12?
12.
12, right? So this is year 12. So we know very well the people who have been consistent and very supportive. And even when they can't physically make it out to a program, we still know who's supportive, in various ways, who have certainly been supportive. This was the first one. This was the first one, wasn't it?
This
Yeah,
was,
this was the first one. Dr. Bracy and Dr. Motley. Yeah, I remember that. I remember all of them.
yeah, I just wanted to go through just a few of the ones that we have had
Mhm.
in the past, just to show you the caliber of folk. Dr. John Bracy, um, Keith Motley, who at the time was the president um, of UMass
Boston.
Boston,
Mhm.
now the head of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts.
Mhm.
Of course, Dr. Kunjufu, you
Mhm.
already talked about. We had the
He's
Reverend.
he's awesome. Listen, Dr. Conjufu goes back way before we had the opportunity to meet him personally. Um, I was enamored by Dr. Conjufu. He used to come. What's that show that used to come on BET, Teen Summit or something like that? It was like Teen Summit or something like that. He used to like do some commentary. He used to just do some work on Teen Summit, and that's when I found out about him. And we have a library in our home, so my husband is always buying books. We're always, buying books. So we got everything that Dr. Kajufu has ever published, and put out there, right? So
The,
and we still have it. We
all
still
of the
have
volumes
all his books.
of the conspiracy to destroy black boys,
Right.
all of that.
Absolutely.
I first got to meet Dr. Kunjufu years ago when I was first appointed national chaplain under the administration of Steve Burdine for our fraternity. And we had a conclave in Chicago, and he was the keynote speaker for our banquet.
Yeah.
And that was the first time. And we kind of connected at that time. And I said then, I was going to bring Dr. Kunjufu to Springfield. And I was able to do it several times.
That's
And
right. Several times, like 3 times.
even to the point where he now touches his bases with me periodically to ask, hey,
Right.
can I?
Right.
So it's been a blessing.
Now,
Reverend,
in my opinion, Dr. Kunjufu is responsible for, the what's called now the School of Prison Pipeline. But it was Dr. Kunjufu's research and writings, really, that started to develop that language, so that we could see the system of education and how it's contributing, certainly to the prison system. But nevertheless, it was his writings. I'm definitely pretty sure about that. It was his writings. It was his research. It was his publications that was really that started alluding us, to what was happening in the school systems, and how, again, it was feeding black boys in particular, to the school systems, and how we was contributing to that. And what I mean by that is how black families was contributing to that system as well.
Yeah.
He has this one line that I remember. He would say that mothers raise their girls and love their boys. Remember him saying that?
Yeah.
Black mothers raise their girls and love their boys. And then he broke that down as to, how, we'll tell our girls, which is very true, to a certain extent. We'll tell our girls, no, you can't do this. No, you can't go there. No, you going to church. No, you this, that, or whatever. But especially if we are in situations where maybe the father's not there, or maybe not in the home, or absent, for whatever reason, we carry a lot of guilt with our boys sometimes, and so we're more like lenient with our boys, or we can be very lenient with our boys, and we'll tell our boys, or we'll ask our boys, do you want to go to church, or do you want to do this, or do you want to? So that's what he meant by we raise our girls and we love our boys, or whatever. That's what he meant by that. And it, from a psychological, kind of a sociological perspective. But yeah.
Right. Liz Walker, she's in a pastor in Boston, but she was a national journalist and documentarian who had traveled to the Sudan and other places on fact-finding missions. We brought her. Domingo Guyton, who is a younger brother, hip hop artist and author and speaker, and we still stay in touch with each other to this day. And he did a fabulous presentation. He came to me twice on the N-word issue. Of course, we brought Dr. Steve Perry, Tim Wise.
He was my friend before he became the Dr. Steve Perry that everybody knows. Steve was actually in higher education. And, as you know, I was in higher ed for 15 years. So, but nevertheless, Steve was, just one of my friends. He was just, my homeboy, or whatever. But now he's very popular, as we all know.
He was, my brother was his boss, who my brother John worked for the Hartford school system. He was Steve Perry's direct supervisor once upon a time. Of course, I bought Tim Wise several times.
Love Tim. Love Tim.
Dollar.
He is the blackest white man I know. He is the blackest white man I know.
Dr. Whitney Battle Baptiste.
Yeah, I just talked to her the other day. She
we always went to bring people of international acclaim, but we have them right here in our local area. And Dr. Battle Baptiste is one of the few African American female archaeologists and anthropologists.
She's one of the few archaeologists, period.
Yeah, and she now, she has her theoretical Black feminist theories, and she is the director of the W.E.B. Du Bois Center at the University of Massachusetts. Just a brilliant sister that we have had the pleasure of being associated with, and we've had her several times. Of course, we had the Sister Soldier, um, award-winning, best-selling author. Um, used to call herself a raptivist instead of an activist. Um, she cut her teeth as the only female member of the group Public Enemy, and then did her own solo projects as well. The last time I talked to her was working on another novel. Um, and so it was packed house that night, I tell you. And so it was a blessing to have her. We had Coquise, who has really been on the front lines of the battle against breast cancer, still fighting, for it. Of course, some repeats we have here. We bought Kimba Smith Cradia on more than one occasion. She wrote a landmark book that talked about her experience with getting caught up with a drug dealer boyfriend and just happening to be in the car when he was arrested, and the mandatory minimum drug sentencing laws that were a result of the 1993 crime bill, and how she got this crazy sentence for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And Bill Clinton commuted her sentence, and she's been on the warpath, against those types of draconian sentencing laws and the disenfranchisement of felons, taking away their rights to vote, et cetera, et cetera. That's your boy. Dr. Boyce Watkins has come through. Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner, the Joe Madison. My wife listens to him every day on Sirius XM. And I believe he's come to us more than once as well.
He's come to us twice. The Black Eagle and Karen Hunter, I actually was listening to them long before my husband knew who they were. My husband, though, it was an organic meetup, with him and Karen. They met each other through, I believe it was Twitter. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Each other through Twitter, and so a relationship forged from there with her. The same thing I believe with Ada. With Ida, I believe the same thing happened there. Yeah, so phenomenal speakers, babe. We'll take up the whole show if we go through everybody.
Yeah, no, it's quick. We get Mov, Clifton Davis, Debbie Irving, Tamika Mallory, this brother Marino Cordova, they call him the MLK of Colombia. We had him come through. Nicole Franklin. This brother was on the ticket for the Green Party as vice president, Amadou Baraka. I'm just kind of giving you all a sampling of the type of speakers that we have had come through. Of course, my wife just mentioned Kenter. And this only goes, the speakers, shows you the speakers through 2019. Of course, we go beyond that with our 2020 and 21 speakers as well.
We didn't let the pandemic stop us.
Right, exactly. So come out. The next two, Aubrey Hendricks and Eaton Thomas, you want to be a part of that. So March 8th and April 19th. So I put it in the chat already. Go and register. If you haven't registered, go on and register.
Okay, babe, I'm going to ask you to do something because I believe somebody is asking about the names of the books written by Dr. Kunjufu. So if you can put that in the comments for people to kind of pick up at their leisure, that'd be good too. But please, everybody go and register. There's no excuses. You don't have to live here in Springfield. Of course, you would if it was in person. But the other two remaining programs, this one on March 8th and the one on April 19th. First of all, we always used to do it within the confines of Black History Month. However, this year we're spreading it out a little bit because, as we all know, Black History is every day and it's every month and it's 24/7. So we don't have to be confined to just the month of February. So, with that being said, we're having a program on March 8th. It will be virtual, but please go and register. And then we're having a program on April 19th. It will be virtual as well. And please go and register for the two remaining Lift Every Voice series for this year, 20.
And it's not just the national speakers we're bringing. The local talent is important as well. We highlight local talent right here in this area in terms of singing, dancing, spoken word. So you definitely want to come out and support our local talent as well.
Yeah, March 8th is going to be a little special, babe. It kind of worked out this way. It wasn't, I didn't do it intentionally, but it's kind of how it ended up. So on March 8th, it's going to be our Swan talent. The dancing, the poetry, and the music is going to be our son and our daughters. So, and maybe even our granddaughters. So it's gonna be our Swan talent. So that's a special little treat, at least for us. So, please, register and be with us on March the 8th, which is next week. Next week, Tuesday.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. Somebody asked for the registration link.
It's in the comments.
Yeah, it's in the, go scroll up. Matter of fact, I think I just pinned it
Mhm.
as the pinned comment. So just click that link right there and you'll be able to go ahead and register.
Okay, so it's 10:30, so I have a half hour to do this. I think this is going to be pretty important. Again, I'm highlighting today as Mental Health Monday. I kind of want to make this distinction. I'm going to call it Black Mental Health Monday because there are some things that are a little unique to us in our mental health. So I was encouraged and I was also inspired this weekend. And so, babe, this is gonna be news to you, but I was somewhat inspired to kind of make this transition today and have this mental health discussion on Black mental health because of you. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I know that you are a very private man. Look, he disappeared already. I know that you're a very private man. You're not as transparent as I am in discussing these issues, but nevertheless, I was inspired by you. I don't even know if you realize it, but if everybody was paying attention, Bishop kind of gave you a picture of his this week's past schedule. I mean, his past schedule this week. So every day he had something to do. And so he said, yeah, this week was busy. Well, I would like to say to you, um, for years, you've been busy like that. For years, you've been busy like that. For years, you've been running like that. And so I just kind of felt led to kind of, talk about things like that. So uh I met a judge over the weekend, and you know what I'm talking about when I say that. And this judge, is a prolific writer. He publishes thoughts and opinions. And he heard me say something. And so he came to me over the weekend on Saturday. And he said to me, he said, Sister Swan, I need you to start writing opinions on mental health, particularly Black mental health. And he said, don't worry about the opinions of the experts and other whatever. He was like, but you need to start writing your own opinions. And so this is probably gonna be part of maybe the first opinion that I composed. So here's some content and context to that. So in my opinion, Black people, we need our own DSM, and right now we're at a DSM 5. And for those of you who don't know what a DSM is, it's a diagnostic statistical manual. In layman's terms, it is the Bible for therapists and clinicians to help us diagnose, prognose, and create treatment plans for mental disorders. And although, we certainly have all of us, I mean, all groups and all people and all humans, we have our humanity, we have our humanness in common. There are some psychological, sociological, and certainly some historical differences that impact what, what I believe our symptomatology, if you will. So another opinion that I have is that our emotional intelligence or our emotional intelligence scale oftentimes will differ as well, and that makes a difference in say outcomes, and that makes a difference in how we respond to treatment, mental health treatment, and things like that as well. So those are two hypotheses, if you will. Those are two opinions, that I have. So one example, and I'm gonna get to how you inspired this, babe. So one example of focus for me um is my revelation of depression, for instance, and how depression looks on Black people, and how depression may look within the Black community, rather as compared to other groups, particularly Black men. So babe, my first question to you is, when you hear the word depression, what's your definition of depression? What are you thinking when you hear depression? Oh, so and so is depressed. So what does that mean to you? How would you define that?
Um, I guess it's a disorder, where the way that you feel negatively affects how you think and how you act. That it has a profound impact, on how you think and how you act. It causes feelings of sadness, a loss of interest. It makes you lethargic, um, and it really causes you to potentially act in a manner that you would not if you weren't going through depression. So, you know, people are more likely to harm themselves, to commit suicide, to do.
Okay, I don't want you to go there. I'm
Yeah,
just saying, when you hear depression,
well,
so
that's
I'm just going to take the one word that you said, sadness. Okay, so we're going to work with that. All right, it's really important that we try not to really well, it's really important that we just say that the main word, when you hear depression, you think it's sadness. Okay,
that's
so
what sadness, unhappiness.
yeah, okay, right. So that sometimes that's kind of
Um,
similar or the same thing. So we're
Misery.
gonna stick with sadness, unhappiness. Okay. Now, in our society, socially speaking, Black men are on the bottom of the totem pole. with the way that we are treated, or with the way that we are perceived, or black men are perceived, right? So, black men, in my opinion, they are treated differently socially. They are treated differently socially. Blacks are dealing with those unspoken. Black men are dealing with those unspoken messages, always internalizing those stereotypes, right? You're always internalizing and thinking about those stereotypes, whether consciously or unconsciously. And and a lot of those stereotypes, well, most of those, all of them actually, all of those stereotypes are very demeaning, very degrading, and certainly don't show black men in the reality, black men and boys in the reality of who they are and who they may be, placing them, or can certainly place them on a path of feeling like they got to disprove, right? All of those messages, all of those stereotypes. It's sad because these messages are lies. And anytime you try to disprove a lie, you will find yourself chasing after your tail. So, what do I mean by that? What do you think I mean by that?
Well, it don't. The problem with a lie is it really doesn't matter if you provide undeniable empirical evidence that completely debunks the lie. Once it's told, you are going to have an element of folks who are going to believe it no matter what.
Right.
So trying to chase down the lie does not negate the effects of the lie in the minds of those who choose to believe it. So it's really a waste of your energy, and then another lie is just going to be told even after that one.
Yeah,
Um,
but for the most part, what I'm trying to say to you is unconsciously, black men and black boys are trying to disprove the lies that's been told on them for generations, right? The lie that they're lazy, that they're unintelligent, that they're incapable, that they're unworthy, or whatever the case may be. So it's an unconscious factor, and that's what weighs on black men. We're dealing with black men today, but the same thing, certainly can be said about black women and girls. But we're dealing with black boys and black men today. And with that being said, black men's depression, or the symptoms of depression, can oftentimes look different on them than, say, a white man. And the reason why I say that is because white men have the luxury to feel certain things, and black men don't, because of these stereotypes and because of these lies that's being told on them. Oftentimes, for instance, black people don't, again, have the luxury. When black people feel anything is misconstrued intentionally to fit, into those lies, to fit into this white supremacist, right? Or to fit into racism, to justify the mistreatment, right? The mistreatment of black boys and black men. Example could be, black men are feeling exhausted. Black men are feeling constantly tired. Black men are unable to get out of bed, but they're viewed as lazy. Whites somehow are diagnosed as, say, with chronic fatigue, or chronic fatigue syndrome. I don't know a black man that was ever diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, but I know plenty of white folks that
Chronic
have been.
fatigue, that white supremacy. I'm chronically fatigued by it.
Okay. Now, more people, because of the activism and the advocacy, or whatever, more of us are, starting to, be viewed, and diagnosed with, say, depression, anxiety, but, kind of generalized depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth. But, if you think about it, from its very beginning, white folks have always had the luxury of being diagnosed, instead of being viewed as something else, like a lazy, like a unintelligent, like a learning disability, or like or whatever the case may be. Um, okay, so again, we have all of these diagnoses that's made available, in the DSM. But again, for the most part, Black folks have not been afforded the diagnosis. And so, of course, that gets back to the racism. So, white folks will be diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, depression, mood disorder, and a whole host of other, factors before they're called lazy, or labeled as lazy, or labeled as unable to learn, or labeled as, any of these other factors. It's the typical ignoring and dismissing of Black pain that exists within the mental health care system. I saw a video just yesterday of Chadwick Boseman. This kind of help visualize what I'm talking about. He was at this event, and as we know, he kept his illness, with cancer. He was battling what was it, intestinal cancer? I can't remember. What kind of, yeah, okay. But no one knew he was sick or battling cancer, because he didn't make it public, and he didn't tell anybody. I think the only people that knew was his immediate family. I'm not even sure if they knew. But he was so exhausted at this event. He had lost a lot of weight, and he kept falling asleep. Well, he had just had his cancer treatment, and the cancer treatment drains you. But he was trying to keep up with his schedule. And so he went to this event, and he kept falling asleep. And the white guy that was sitting next to him, of course, don't know that he had cancer, and he was battling cancer and had cancer treatment. So he kept waking him up, just kind of pushing him, waking him up. And then but what was crazy was that he got called all kinds of names. People was making fun of him because he had lost all of this weight. They were saying that he wasn't attractive anymore, that he didn't look good, and and maybe he was out drinking the night before. All of these assumptions, and all. I mean, it just they said, oh, he's being so rude and disrespectful, and and da 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 da. All of this crazy stuff. That just went after him. They just went after him and berated him, and and just went in. Had absolutely no idea that the man was battling cancer, trying to stay alive, doing all that he could to stay alive, and had his chemotherapy, his cancer treatment, and the reason why he was falling asleep and couldn't stay up, and this, that, and the other, was the weight of the treatment. Whether that was the medication, whether that was the chemotherapy, or whatever he had undergone. And so people had these preconceived notions of what he had been doing, or that they just made up this idea that he was being rude and disrespectful. And so my revelation is, oftentimes this is how Black men go about life with their mental health. So in other words, to kind of disprove all of these stereotypes that's put on them, uh uh they keep going. They keep going when they need to slow down. They don't know how to rest. They don't know how to vacate. They don't know how to take vacations. They don't know how to take breaks. They don't know how. They don't know how, because they're so busy, or can be so busy, trying to keep up or destroy some of these stereotypes and preconceived notions and lies that are put out there on them, and it's impacting their mental health. So it's so much more, you were getting ready to kind of go down that lane. But we buy into it. And oftentimes we ourselves within our families perpetuate these stereotypes because white supremacy has oftentimes worked, especially in areas of our mental health. So another mental health hypothesis I have, and black male preachers are my case study, is that often we see black males functioning at the most chronic levels, risking their mental health by overworking, overperforming, trying to prove to the world they are not sad, they are not anxious, they are not angry, they are not weary, they are not grieving. And and it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard, right, for a black man to be angry in this society anyway, right? But
It's easy to be angry.
right, we have to be angry. But I'm just saying, it's really, really hard for that anger not to be viewed as a negative.
All right. The anger is,
Of a black man is viewed as a negative.
yeah, the anger is definitely going to be viewed in a negative light. But it's like James Baldwin put it best: to be conscious in America, to be black and conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. The only way you can't be angry in this nation over something that is affecting the diaspora is to be unconscious, is to just be oblivious to what's going on.
Well, absolutely. And so what I'm saying is, though, within the confines of society, black men don't have the luxury, black boys either, don't have the luxury to
And
feel. That
and
is a natural course of life. It
and
is
that
very
further
natural to feel.
erodes mental health when you have to suppress anger, suppress frustration, hold it on the inside, because if you express it in some kind of way, it can have some negative consequences on your life or your livelihood or whatever. Like I watch these videos of white folks cussing the police out. I mean, police pull them over. I mean, white ladies, white men. I mean, literally cussing them out, telling them off, the whole nine, and the cops just being respectful and writing their ticket or doing whatever. But if a black man did the same thing, he knows he could wind up dead. So even if he knows it's completely bogus, he knows I can't cuss this cop out and say you pulled me over for no reason, because I'm not a white man. I can wind up with a bullet in my head and not ever make it home. So I have to hold that anger and that frustration on the inside. And eventually, the emotional trauma and turmoil that you hold on the inside manifests itself in a physical way. Ulcers, headaches, it manifests itself in terms of physical ailments and sickness that are brought on by stress and strain because of the everyday life that we live in this white supremacist society.
Well, I just want to bring it a little bit closer to home, because I do agree with that factor, but I want us to also talk about our everyday interactions at home with your spouse, with your children, say, or even on the jobs, or whatever, or your neighbors, and and this, that, and the other. So even without that kind of external pressure, we're talking about the internal pressure that exists within our everyday functioning as well. So even the people, even getting back to the case study, so and talking about black pastors in particular, or certainly, I believe it was a sister who said, Brandy Williams, who said, be careful not to generalize all black men, though. And so, of course, there's always exceptions. but I'm telling you what I see and what I observe, what I'm observing, myself, as a therapist, of course, here, and like I said, I'm starting to kind of put some hypotheses together and some research together to, expound a little bit more deeper upon, my opinions here. But so we buy into it oftentimes. We ourselves within our family perpetuate those stereotypes because white supremacy has oftentimes worked, right? But even the people they pastor, so getting back to those pastors, right? Getting back to those pastors, uh, people put an unrealistic expectation on them. So, people, and you know this to be true, and I want you to speak a little bit to this, Bishop, you know, we as members or congregants, of a church, oftentimes we'll put expectations on our pastor that we don't put on ourselves, and and it's like that's unrealistic in this sense. We almost expecting the pastor, in our case, it's the pastor and his family, right? It's the pastor and his family, that includes the spouse, or whatever the case may be. We almost want they almost want us to be superhuman. I remember one time, it was right after my grandmother died. And My grandmother died on a Saturday, and I came to church on that Sunday morning, and I definitely was not myself. I was kind of in a daze, and I think I was probably just kind of sitting there. I wasn't myself. I don't think, I'm usually loud and maybe boisterous, and all of those kinds of things, and maybe a little animated or whatever the case may be. But I wasn't that day. Uh, and and so one of the young ladies, this hurt me so bad. One of the young ladies sent me a text message actually while I was sitting up front in my first lady seat, whatever. And she sent me a text message, and she was like, "First lady, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You just sitting there. You don't have no smile on on your face. You need to straighten up." That's what the text message said. And then I didn't respond, of course church was going on, so she shouldn't have been sending me no text message in the first place. But then after church, she came to me, approached me, and said the same thing.
Mhm.
I didn't educate her, but like I think a couple of weeks later, or whatever, and of course, everybody knows by now, knew by then that my grandmother had passed away and so on and so forth, or whatever the case may be. But I felt the need eventually to kind of educate the church community that, we people too, we go through stuff too, we get sad too, we hurt too, we grieve too, or whatever. And just like you want us to comfort you and support you, or whatever in your time of need, we need the same things. You
But
know, just because we the leaders, we don't mean that we don't need that, as well. And
yeah,
understanding.
yeah. The reality is there is an expectation. Um, there's an expectation for you to be superhuman,
Yeah. Well,
and
that was the word that I used, superhuman.
and for and for the everyday instances that negatively affect other people, even if they give you pause to be affected by it, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to bounce back immediately.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to go through depression or anxiety or any other thing because you have to be there for other people. And and that alone produces a level of anger. I remember being very angry, at one point in time, because people often have unrealistic expectations to the point where they expect for a leader, a pastor, to have to be clairvoyant, to know what they're going through, even though they don't inform you. and then they'll badmouth you. When I was in the hospital and you didn't visit me, nobody told me you were in the hospital. You didn't tell me, and nobody in your family told me. How was I supposed to know? Am I supposed to have ESP? Am I supposed to have a crystal ball? You know, or what? My sister in North Carolina died, and the church didn't say nothing. Did you tell the church that you had a loved one that passed away? No, you didn't. How are we supposed to know? But then at the same time, let me just finish this point, babe, because this is important. At the same time that you have this expectation for us to undergird and support you and to be there for you, even when we don't know about it, when we go through certain things, it's the same people who never say boo. You know, I had an instance where I had a daughter who tried to commit suicide.
We had a daughter.
Yeah. I had a sister who died. I had a cousin who overdosed and died. These are all things that happened while I was in the pastoral ministry, and with some very few exceptions, there was no groundswell of support by the church members or by the community of people who expect my support to say, hey, Bishop, are you okay? How are you doing? How's your family, making it through this instance? And they expected for, okay, that happened, bounce back, get over it.
And let's stay in that same vein and let's keep it 1,000. Even when we, of course, there's always exceptions. And Sister Brandy, please, understand that I'm not trying to, group everybody, into this, or whatever. But it is big enough. It is a large enough percentage to where it needs to be addressed. So with that being said, when we was going through our marital crisis, we can count on one hand how many people really reached out, to say that they was praying or did we need anything, that loved both of us, or whatever the case may. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, it felt like people were glorying in it, or almost like, talking about it, or whatever behind our back, but, not necessarily, there to support us or to encourage us or to, make us feel loved, or whatever the case may be. Now, and don't get me wrong, and I think that this is important too, to add to what you said, that not only do we not know everything, but we also cannot be there for everything for everybody either. And I think that's part of that unrealistic expectation that is put on leaders and their families. And we know of people to lead a church because we forgot a birthday. We forgot to shout out a birthday, or we forgot, we didn't show up at a graduation, or, or whatever. People to understand we got our families that we got to put first too. And I, as a first lady, that's my thing. I got my LMF too, Sister Brandy, or whatever. I encourage people to put their families first. It is not of God, in my humble opinion, to put anything before your family, and that includes the church.
I would invoke the ire of members on a consistent basis. What we used to do when we had printed programs, we would print the birthdays of people for that month. And we would print those birthdays based on information that was given to us by the membership. So if we had your information on file and we knew that your birthday was in February or March or whatever, it would be on the program. And inadvertently, there would always be somebody who would come and say, who would be mad and literally not come to church or be getting ready to leave the church because my name wasn't printed and my birthday's in March. Well, who did you tell when your birthday was? When we put out in the welcome center the profile sheets to ask you to fill out with your information, including your birthday. Did you fill one out?
Mhm.
No, I didn't. So how in the hamburger did you expect for us to just magically know when your birthday was? We would get the same thing with folks. I'm not on the call list. I don't get the robocalls. Did your phone number change?
Yeah, but then you get the opposite of that. Take
Yeah,
me off the robocall list. I'm tired of them phone calls coming through. I'm tired of them text messages. So
phone, my
it's
phone number changed, and I didn't. I know I didn't give my new phone number. So how did you expect for the information to get to you? It's just sometimes it's unrealistic expectations and pressure that they put
really
unnecessarily
unrealistic.
on leaders.
So what I want to do, because it's after 11 o'clock. So what I want to do a couple of things. I want to finish reading the notes that I got today. So that's gonna take a couple of more minutes. But I also want to highlight what Mother Green said in the comments here. She said it's God, family, and church. And I absolutely agree in that order. And I typically say not God is not first, he's the center. So it's God, he's in the center. So that means whichever way you are turned, God is gonna always be the head. Whichever way you turn, if you look up, he's there if he's in the center. If you turn around, he's there because if he's in the center, you turn to the right, he's there because he's in the center. You turn to the left, he's there because he's in the center. So I say put God in the center. Certainly, then your family is around God, with God, and you do church together as a family. That is, my understanding of that. But let me read the rest of my notes because, I think that this is a real important discussion. I think we're going to have to pick it up at the next Black Mental Health Monday. But I said, I don't care how saved you are. When you neglect this temple, it breaks down both your mind and your body. And often we neglect our mind because we don't see or feel that as quick as a physical pain. Statistically speaking, and this is really important, um, statistically speaking, Black folks were winning in one area. We were the least likely group. We were the least likely group to commit suicide. Since the pandemic, though, suicide rates have decreased in every other group but ours. Yes, the suicide rates for Black people is starting to surpass whites, percentage wise, proportionately speaking. In Christendom, proportionally speaking, the divorce rates have also surpassed worldly rates. What we need to do is have mental health and marriage ministries instituted within our churches. Like they need to be primary ministries, in my humble opinion, in churches. We need to push our people to be educated on mental health. We need to glory taking care of your mind, like that needs to be glorified, like we glorified, taking care of the spirit. We glorify that, and that's appropriate, but it needs to balance out. We also need to glorify taking care of our mind. We need to implement mental health exercises and activities. So we need to try to create more environments and atmospheres, that inspire people, that motivate people, that make people laugh. Like laughter is good medicine. So we need to create environments where people are feeling free. They're having fun, but they're also being themselves. Being loved and embraced for who they are. All of that kind of stuff goes to certainly enhance our mental health. We need to be honest with ourselves about our individual and collective experiences. It's really, really, really important, to identify those areas within the Black community, where we do need to, step up a little bit more, or we need to be, honest about. Mental health awareness should be practiced and not stigmatized and viewed as a negative. We need to stop calling people crazy. you know, because nine times out of ten, if they acting crazy, it's because you ignored it, you neglected it, or you made them feel like they couldn't be honest and upfront about whatever trouble or experiences that, they were having. So the church community, the Black church in particular, the community, we need to be more open, we need to be more understanding, and we need to support each other. let me tell you something let me tell you something one thing that I won't generalize is this: we all have some type of mental illness that we dealing with. We all are on the spectrum in some kind of way, because we have that in common too. We all are on the spectrum. We all have been traumatized. We all have been impacted by this racism that we got to deal with. We all have been impacted by our history, by our collective history. So we all are struggling with our mental wellness. We all are struggling with our mental wellness. We got that in common. We have all leaders need to be respected as human. And we need to embrace the humanity or the humanness, right, of our leaders, of our spiritual leaders. They need to be free, they need to be liberated too. When we put these unrealistic expectations upon our leaders, we bound them. We put shackles. We're putting shackles on them. Listen, y'all, in that area of suicide, where suicide is increasing in the Black community, don't y'all know that it's increasing amongst pastors and leaders? There are more people walking away from the pulpit than opening doors of a church today. More people are walking away because of the weight of their mental health. Of course, that can eventually impact their physical health, but it's the mental health. It's their mental health that's at stake, that's at risk. So it's definitely something going on. You are a pastor. You are a pastor, and you have yourself and your family to care for. People need to take care of themselves and their families. It's not the pastor's responsibility to take care of you and your family. It's his responsibility to take care of his family. And it's your responsibility to take care of yours. I said one time, and some people got offended because I know sometimes within our culture we do little things, right? And so I said one time that, and I said it lightheartedly, and I said it in love, but I don't need nobody frying my husband fried chicken when your husband at home starving. Let me take care of my husband.
Well,
Let me take care of my husband. Let me fry his chicken, or whatever. You fry your husband's chicken.
bake my chicken.
You know what I'm saying? Get my point, babe. Don't play with me with this. Okay. Don't play with me with this. So, let him take care of his wife. He's not gonna be anybody else's husband. He's gonna be my husband. He's gonna be daddy to his kids. He's gonna be a spiritual leader. He's gonna be a pastor. This, that, and the other. But don't put the unrealistic expectation upon him to care for everybody else's family. He can't do that. He's not God. He's a pastor and he's a man. He's a pastor and he's a man. So, we need to take care of our own families. We need to take care of our own lives, or whatever. Don't put the pressure on somebody else. Don't put the pressure. Take responsibility for yourself. Because of the erroneous practices and teaching, less and less young people are attracted to ministry. I think this is really important that we take note of this. It used to be when I was growing up, I'll be 55 in a couple of weeks. When I was growing up, there used to be pew full of young people that were aspiring missionaries, aspiring ministers. We hard pressed to find one now, one on the road. We hard pressed to find one in the whole church. Now, I think that's something we need to take a look at. Because What's happening is, being a leader, being a spiritual leader is becoming less and less attractive, to young people. And I believe it has a lot to do with the way that we do things systemically within our culture and within our organization, and the weight of those practices up on our mental health, and how people are being persuaded to leave, or persuaded not, or convinced that this is not, no, this is not for me. So I just want to end by saying this, that self-care is much more than a pedicure or a manicure or a bubble bath. That self-care is really setting boundaries. Self-care is saying, okay, on Mondays I'm gonna rest and really resting. On Wednesdays I'm gonna take my spouse out and I'm gonna spend quality time with my spouse. It's gonna be date night and really, having date night. On like my husband has a pizza night every Thursday with his son, with our son, I should say. So, making sure that you bring the pizza, and that not only do you bring the pizza, but come home, sit down with your son, ask him about his day, ask him about his week, check in on him, this, that, and the other, and really doing it. Okay? Self-care is really about setting boundaries, is really about setting priorities. It's really about getting your rest and not feeling guilty about it. It's really about telling yourself the truth, facing the truth, right? And knowing the truth, right. That's the way that you get justice to yourself. That's the way that you permeate justice to those that are connected to you, is by facing the truth, dealing with the truth, but taking care of yourself. Because at the end of the day, how can we really, 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 really encourage people to take care of their mental health if we're not doing it? My grandmother oftentimes said, and I'm gonna end with this statement. My grandmother said, and I didn't understand it when I was a kid, but I definitely get it now. And my grandmother said that she'd rather see a sermon than hear one. And so, in other words, my grandmother was trying to tell me all of that time that the most powerful sermons that was taught to her were the examples, the role models before her that she saw and she got the chance to observe, as opposed to to somebody getting up, formalizing and verbalizing a sermon or a speech or a presentation. So that lady that was taking care of herself, that she mattered to. Because it's not about putting yourself first with self-care. It's about saying, me too. Like, I matter too. My health matters too. My rest matters too. My family matters too. Who I am, it matters too. So I just wanted to end by saying that. And thank you everybody for listening. I hope this was an encouragement in some kind of way. Sister Brandy, I need for us to get together, because it's not a whole lot of, I'm assuming you a black woman, it's not a whole lot of LMFTs. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're in Massachusetts or not, but it's definitely not a lot of LMHCs in Massachusetts, black LMHCs. And is even smaller, a smaller group of LMFTs. I couldn't, when me and my husband was looking for somebody, we couldn't find out one.
There's not a whole lot of LMNOPs either.
Huh?
Not a lot of LMNOPs.
Okay, yeah, and ABCs. Okay, so but anyway, anyway, we couldn't find out one. When we were in crisis, we went looking for African American LMFT, and we couldn't find out one. And that was actually what inspired me. And just to give you a little brief testimony, Sister Brandy, um, when that happened, I was both saddened by it, but I was also inspired by it. and the Lord told me to go to school, to pursue my marriage and family therapy and my mental health counseling. And I said, well, God, I ain't got no money to go to school. God made it where I didn't have to pay a dime for my degree. I did not pay a dime for my degree. Got 2 degrees for free because, of what God, did in my life. So I didn't have to pay a dime for it. So, when you listen to God and, go on that path, God will take care of you in that way. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining Justice and Flow. I hope it's been an inspirational day for you. Listen, I just want black men, black boys, take care of yourself. Put your, take care of you. Your mental health matters.
All right, y'all. Until next week, go register. It's pinned in the comment section for the next edition of Lift Every Voice. And stay tuned on next Monday, same time, same bat channel. We'll be coming at 9 with the spoken word, at 10 with Justice and Flow. And until
Thank you, Mother.
the next time we talk to you and you talk to us, always remember God loves you, and so do we. Deuces.